In this video, I will show you how to cut and pull flights. Plus, I will give you a little secret on how to delay the molt naturally should you not want to cut and pull flights. My suggestion would be at weaning to take off just the tiniest tip of the flight. Very, very little. You don't need to cut any more than that, just the tip of the quill. That also gives you the option, if it's a slow molting pigeon, there may be no need to pull the 10th flight. As you can see, the 9th flight is completely grown in. This bird is going to be dropping the 8th soon. It will have a full wing for the convention race the beginning of November without me actually having to pull that 10th flight. And by taking just the littlest tip, prevented extra stress, bird didn't run into hawk trouble, and really gives the bird an advantage. And again, you can decide later on, once you cut the tips, if you should pull or not. Here is an example of what the flight should look like once you cut the tips. Just take a little bit off. Actually, I took too much off that 10th flight. Now with this pigeon, I've decided, because it's such a slow molting pigeon, I'm not going to pull any flights. It'll probably be around the 7th flight, possibly growing in the 8th flight for the convention race. So again, I didn't handicap the pigeon by pulling flights, and it's not at a disadvantage at all the whole season. And that little tips off the flight won't affect it one bit. Here is another pigeon that I took just the tiniest tip of the 9th and 10th. I also realized that there's no way this pigeon will be at that point in the molt for the convention race, so there was no need to pull the 10th. As you can see, the bird is right here on the molt. It'll may molt a couple more flights and have a nearly full perfect wing for the convention race. Here is a pigeon that I actually cut the 9th and the 10th flight, and I pulled the 9th flight. That was fairly grown in. I pulled the 10th flight. There's a good chance this pigeon will be completely finished with the molt. There was also a chance it may have finished on its own, but again, I couldn't take that chance going into the convention race. It takes a long time for these flights to grow in. The next segment, I'll show you how to actually pull the flights. Many, when pulling flights, will damage the quill. You have to be extremely careful when you pull the flight. As you can see, this 9th flight has been pulled and is completely grown in, which takes about 6 weeks, to not put any damage on the quill. You can't put any pressure here when you pull the flight. You have to pull the flight without putting any pressure on the quill, the spot where the flight grows out of. If you put pressure on the quill, the flight will grow and deformed. So I tend to take the pigeon, I hold the pigeon, hold the wing low, and pull the flight without putting any pressure here around the quill. If you squeeze and compress the quill as the flight's being pulled, the flight will grow and deformed and never be right. Here's a little secret many fanciers don't know. If you take the tip of that 10th flight off, say 6 weeks before it's going to drop the 9th flight, that 9th flight will grow in completely all the way to the end before it drops the 10th flight. It's nature's way of saying in the bird, I have a broken flight. I can't drop the next flight too quickly or I'll have a big hole in the wing. So nature makes the bird hold that flight for a long period of time. So this flight will grow in completely, that flight will then drop. The other option is to take the tip off the last 2 flights going into the end of the season, say about 6-8 weeks before the end of the season. The bird will completely grow in the 8th before it drops the 9th, will completely grow in the 9th before it drops the 10th. Hope you like this little secret.